Imagine this. You're sitting in a quiet room. The lights are off. No music, no screens, no background noise, just you and your thoughts. Within minutes, a restless itch begins to grow in your chest. You check your phone, even though you know there's nothing new. You open an app, scroll without purpose, close it, then reopen it. You don't even want what's on the screen. You're just trying to get away. But away from what exactly? There's no threat in this room, no task demanding your attention. And yet still you run. Now zoom out. Look around society, this frantic rhythm of existence. Endless swiping, binge-watching, gaming, gambling, buying, numbing, scrolling, escaping. We don't just use technology, we disappear into it. We don't just take breaks, we vanish. The average person now taps, clicks, or swipes their phone over 2,600 times a day. But the real number, the one that matters, isn't how often we escape. It's why. And here's the paradox: the more freedom we gain, the more imprisoned we become. You live in the most connected, resource-rich, opportunity-filled era in human history. Yet you're anxious, restless, discontent. You're drowning in comforts and still feel hollow. You chase distraction like a drug, but every high brings you back to the same low. And perhaps deep down, you've started to sense it. You're not escaping something outside you. You're escaping yourself. But what part of you are you trying to silence? That question is a razor. It cuts through the illusion that distraction is harmless. And what it reveals is deeply unsettling. You're not running from boredom. You're not running from stress. You're not even running from pain. You're running from the mirror. Because in silence, the truth creeps in. The unhealed memories, the repressed desires, the shame you hide behind productivity, the loneliness you mask with social media, the fear of meaninglessness that lurks beneath your ambition. You run, not because you're weak, but because the alternative, facing it all, is terrifying. And society rewards your escape. It tells you healing is optional, that emotions are inconveniences, that the past is irrelevant, that growth should be painless, that silence is dangerous. So we keep moving. Faster, noisier, shallower. Ask yourself, why do you check your phone when you're alone? Why do you binge watch when you're not even enjoying it anymore? Why do you constantly need something, anything, to fill the space? Could it be that your addiction to escape is not about entertainment or laziness, but about survival? Now imagine this again. You wake up one day and stop. No distractions, no mental sedatives. You sit with yourself, not your curated self, not your social media mask, not your goals, your plans, your stories, but you, raw and unfiltered. Can you handle that presence? Or does it frighten you more than any horror movie? Carl Jung once said, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls." You think your distractions are choices, but what if they're defenses? What if your busyness is just armor? And what if the true source of your exhaustion isn't what you're doing, but what you're avoiding? You see, there's a hidden cost to this escape, one that's not measured in hours lost, but in self-forgotten. Every time you run, you leave a piece of yourself behind. So now we face the great question: what are you truly running from? And who could you become if you stopped? This isn't about shame. This isn't another call to hustle harder, to detox your phone or optimize your schedule. This is about something deeper, something ancient, something sacred. It's about the war inside you, the war between your conscious self and the shadow you've buried. The parts of you society never taught you how to face. The inner child still crying behind your adult accomplishments. The voice you silenced long ago that whispers, "This isn't who I really am." And yet, what if there's meaning in the discomfort? What if what you've been avoiding is the very thing that could set you free? Because maybe the problem isn't that you escape. Maybe the problem is that no one ever taught you how to stay. It begins earlier than you remember, long before your first phone, before your first heartbreak, before your first failed ambition. This addiction to escape took root in your very formation. As a child, you cried and were told to be quiet. You played and were told to sit still. You asked questions and were told to stop. You were born whole, but every time a part of you was inconvenient, it was gently, sometimes violently, shut down. So you learned to fracture yourself. You learned that love comes with conditions, that happiness must be earned, that silence means something's wrong, that being still is laziness, that feeling too much is weakness, and slowly, the authentic you, the wild, curious, sensitive self, was tucked away for the polished version others would approve of. From that moment on, you weren't just avoiding boredom. You were avoiding the parts of yourself that had been exiled. Carl Jung called this the shadow. Everything within us we refuse to see. Not just our flaws, but our unmet needs, our rejected innocence, our silenced rage, our forgotten dreams. We stuff them into the basement of our psyche, hoping that if we never go down there, we'll be fine. But shadows do not die in the dark. They grow, and when they get too loud, we run. Into entertainment, into achievement, into distraction, into anything that will keep the silence away. But the silence always comes. Addiction to escape, then, is not an addiction to pleasure. It's an addiction to avoidance. And avoidance is a form of psychological survival. It's not weak. It's not immoral. It's human. Because the truth is, most people are not afraid of discomfort. They are afraid of what discomfort might reveal. Enter Schopenhauer, a philosopher who argued that the very core of human existence is suffering, that to exist is to want, and to want is to lack. And if you stop chasing distractions, you're forced to sit in the unbearable awareness that life is not a carnival of pleasure, but a series of unfulfilled desires. He believed that we are driven by a blind, insatiable will that never lets us rest. Even in pleasure, we suffer because the moment we get what we want, we fear its loss or grow bored. So you run, you chase, you scroll, you consume. Not to feel alive, but to numb the tension of existence. And then comes Nietzsche, defiant, roaring, unapologetically awake. He saw that most people do not live. They merely obey, not because they are cowards, but because the weight of freedom is too much. To face yourself fully, to create your own values, to bear your own suffering without illusion, that's a terrifying task. So we conform. We obey the herd morality. We pretend we're happy with shallow pleasures because the alternative is chaos. Authenticity becomes too risky. Individuality becomes too painful. It's easier to scroll, to blend in, to escape. And then there's Aldous Huxley. In Brave New World, he didn't warn of tyrants who would ban books. He warned of a society so sedated by pleasure, so addicted to ease, that people would stop caring about truth altogether. His prophecy wasn't of oppression by pain, but by comfort. A culture that would choose distraction over meaning, simulation over reality, escape over depth. Sound familiar? You don't live in an era of oppression, you live in an era of anesthesia. An emotional novocaine drips into your psyche through every screen, and when the pain creeps back in, you reach for another hit of numbness. Not because you're broken, but because no one taught you how to feel pain without collapsing. And so you build a fortress around yourself. You armor up with routines, addictions, personas. You tell yourself you're fine, but deep down, you know, you've never truly faced yourself. Not really. Because the moment things get quiet, the cracks appear. But here's the thing. All of this, your escape, your distraction, your discomfort, it's not your enemy. It's a message, a signal that something inside you is alive and still trying to be seen. Your addiction isn't a failure. It's a map, a breadcrumb trail back to what you buried. Jean-Paul Sartre once said, "Man is nothing else but what he makes of himself." And yet most of us are not making ourselves. We're being shaped by what we run from. Your life becomes a sculpture of avoidance. And then you wonder why it lacks depth. But avoidance always has a cost. Every time you choose comfort over confrontation, your potential atrophies. Your soul, once loud and radiant, becomes a whisper in a storm of distraction. Yet underneath it all, beneath the algorithms, the trauma, the culture of noise, is you. A self untouched by escape. A self that has never been fully met. So the real issue isn't the escaping. It's that you've forgotten what it means to stay. Stay with boredom and realize it's not emptiness, it's space. Stay with sadness and realize it's not weakness, it's depth. Stay with silence and realize it's not loneliness, it's contact. You've been taught to run from discomfort. But the ancients, the mystics, the philosophers, the wise, knew that transformation begins there. That only by descending into the cave can you reclaim what was lost. So the question lingers like smoke in a dark room. If you stopped running, what might rise from the ashes of what you buried? Every act of escape seems harmless on the surface. You check your phone for a few seconds. You binge a show to relax. You scroll through 100 faces you'll never meet. You call it downtime, self-care, or just passing the time. But no one ever told you that your smallest choices could slowly start shaping your reality. Not in obvious ways, but in the erosion of your inner life. Because escape doesn't just delay you, it rewires you. Neurologically, every hit of distraction, every notification, every sugar rush, every scroll is a microdose of dopamine. A quick reward, a momentary thrill. But your brain doesn't just receive pleasure, it learns from it. The more you escape into comfort, the more your brain starts to believe that discomfort is unsafe. That stillness equals danger. That effort equals pain. And so you become fragile, not physically, but emotionally. You lose the tolerance for silence. You lose the strength to endure introspection. Your attention span fractures like thin glass. You begin to fear being alone, not because solitude is unpleasant, but because when you're alone, there's nowhere left to run from yourself. Now consider this. When was the last time you read a book without checking your phone? When was the last time you had a thought that wasn't interrupted by a screen? When was the last time you sat in discomfort and let it speak? The consequences are everywhere, but they're so normalized you barely notice. You mistake anxiety for busyness. You mistake numbness for peace. You mistake validation for love. And in the process, you lose your ability to live deliberately. Because when you live in constant reaction, you forget how to act from within. Psychologically, this erosion runs deeper than just habits. It cuts into identity. Carl Jung warned that whatever we do not bring to consciousness appears in our life as fate. You think you're choosing your distractions, but over time, they start choosing you. They mold your desires, your values, your sense of self. You start saying things like, "I could never meditate," or "I'm just not a deep thinker," or "I'm too busy for that." But those aren't facts, they're symptoms, evidence that you've been reshaped by your own avoidance. Philosophically, this is existential death by 1,000 cuts. Viktor Frankl, a man who survived Auschwitz and still found meaning in suffering, said, "When a person can't find a deep sense of meaning, they distract themselves with pleasure." That's what escape really is. A substitute for meaning. A counterfeit presence. A counterfeit intimacy. A counterfeit self. And the tragedy is, you become so skilled at pretending to live that you forget how to be alive. Now widen the lens. Zoom out to the cultural level. We live in a society designed to profit from your distraction. Attention is no longer yours, it's a commodity. Big tech doesn't just sell products, it sells you to advertisers. The more time you spend in escape, the more money they make. And so, the entire infrastructure of modern life is engineered to keep you numb, busy, distracted, compliant. Ask yourself this: would a system that wants you to be free, aware, and powerful design itself this way? Or is the goal to keep you so overstimulated you never have time to ask why you feel so empty? Even relationships are shaped by this unseen epidemic. Intimacy has become performance. Vulnerability is filtered. We connect without contact. We replace conversations with memes. When things get hard, we ghost, block, unfollow. Not because we're evil, but because we've been trained to exit discomfort the moment it arises. You are not just addicted to escape. You've been conditioned to believe that escape is normal. And slowly, you trade depth for efficiency, wonder for productivity, soul for survival. You chase goals that aren't yours. You emulate people who are also lost. And in the mirror, you no longer recognize who's looking back. Just a collection of reactions, habits, personas. You may even achieve what others call success. A career, a home, a family. But deep down there's a hum, a quiet despair that whispers, "Is this it?" That's not depression. That's your soul reminding you that you've been living at the surface. And here's the most haunting part of all. Escape doesn't stop time. It erases it. All those hours, days, years you spent avoiding presence, they don't just vanish. They take pieces of your life with them. Not just memories, but possibilities. Connections that were never made. Insights that were never realized. Growth that never happened. Imagine what might have been born if, instead of fleeing discomfort, you listened to it. Imagine the relationship you could have healed if you had faced the conflict. The art you could have created if you endured the boredom. The transformation that could have come if you entered the pain. The self you could have met if you sat in stillness long enough. But don't let this haunt you. Let it awaken you. Because if the cost of escape is the self, then the reward of presence is the soul. And you haven't lost it forever. It waits, quietly, beneath the noise, beneath the cravings, beneath the programmed desires. Still there, still calling. Waiting not for you to try harder, not for you to hustle, but for you to finally stop running. Freedom doesn't begin with action. It begins with awareness. Before you can break free from your addiction to escape, you must first wake up to the cage. Not the one around your body, but the one built quietly around your mind. A prison disguised as convenience, a leash made of notifications, a muzzle formed by fear of stillness. Rebellion, then, is not noise. It's not chaos. It's not destruction. Rebellion is silence, the kind that says, "I will not distract myself today. I will feel what I've been told to numb. I will meet myself where I left me." Start here. Do nothing. Not forever. Just for 5 minutes. Sit in a room with no music, no phone, no plan, and watch what happens. At first, you'll feel bored, then irritated, then anxious, and then beneath it all, you'll feel a trembling, like something inside you is waking up. That's your soul re-entering the body. That's your unprocessed life returning home. Most people never make it past the boredom. They think presence is dull because they've never met it fully. But presence is not dull. Presence is dangerous, because once you taste it, you'll realize how far you've wandered. Now the real rebellion begins. 1. Reclaim your attention. Your attention is your most sacred currency. Where it flows, your life follows. Right now, much of it leaks through cracks built by others, apps, ads, agendas. Take it back, turn off notifications, design your environment to reduce noise, replace reaction with intention. Your attention, when focused, becomes a weapon against the numbing flood, a scalpel that cuts through illusion. 2. Practice intentional discomfort. Sit with emotions you usually avoid. Guilt, loneliness, shame. Let them breathe. Give them names. You'll find they are not monsters but messengers. Emotions do not want to destroy you. They want to free you. They only grow toxic when silenced. Jung called this process shadow integration. To become whole, you must retrieve what you've rejected. That includes your rage, your grief, your envy, your fear. Not to indulge them, but to learn from them. The parts you hide are often the parts that hold your power. 3. Embrace meaningful suffering. Nietzsche said, "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how." Escape addiction thrives in people who've lost their why. When you have no purpose, pleasure becomes your compass. But pleasure is fleeting. Purpose endures. Meaningful suffering is not masochism. It is willingly walking through fire for something greater. Raising a child, finishing a novel, healing trauma, building a life aligned with your inner truth. The pain is still there, but it's pain with a direction. 4. Develop ritual. Modern life is ritual-starved. Without ritual, time becomes meaningless, and the self becomes scattered. Begin your day with intention. Light a candle. Write down one truth. Meditate. Walk in silence. These acts reorient the psyche. They bring coherence to chaos. They say, "I am not a machine. I am a conscious being." Your morning scroll is not neutral. It is ritual in disguise. The question is, who wrote it? 5. Kill the false self. The persona you've built to survive may be the very thing keeping you from living. That hyper-productive, always smiling, never-needy version of yourself. Do you even like them? Would you be friends with them if they weren't you? The false self craves escape because it cannot breathe in truth. Let it die. In its ashes, the real you will rise. Messy, raw, radiant. 6. Choose depth over speed. Modernity seduces you with velocity. Faster is better, quicker is smarter. But truth unfolds slowly. Healing unfolds slowly. Love unfolds slowly. Depth is not efficient, but it's where life lives. Read slowly, eat slowly, speak slowly, and most importantly, feel slowly. Let your experiences penetrate you. Let life mark you. That is how wisdom is formed, not through consumption, but through integration. 7. Build endurance for solitude. Solitude is not loneliness. It's communion with yourself, with the divine, with the raw fabric of existence. Sartre feared the gaze of others because it turned us into objects. In solitude, there are no eyes but your own, no judgment but your own. It is terrifying and liberating. Solitude is where the false self dies and the soul begins to speak. 8. Make art. Any article. You don't have to be an artist. You have to be alive. Draw, sing, dance, write terrible poetry. Your soul doesn't want you to be brilliant. It wants you to express. Escape addiction dies in the presence of creativity. Because when you create, You no longer consume reality. You participate in it. Art is the soul's rebellion against numbness. 9. Reject the myth of perfection. Perfectionism is the mask escape wears. You avoid action because you fear being imperfect. You avoid truth because you fear being exposed. But life was never meant to be polished. The most powerful transformation arises not when you fix yourself, but when you accept yourself enough to evolve. Messy truth is stronger than perfect lies. 10. Reconnect with others, deeply. Not just small talk, not performance, not curated connection. Find people who want truth more than comfort, who will sit with you in silence, who will challenge you to be more than your habits. Connection is the antidote to despair, but only when it's real. Let them see your wounds. Let them hold your doubt. Let them walk beside you, not as spectators, but as witnesses. Because here's the final truth. You don't overcome escape by fighting harder. You overcome it by remembering who you were before you forgot. Not the version of you addicted to approval, not the version of you numbed by noise, but the one beneath all that. The one who once stared at the sky and felt wonder. The one who wasn't afraid to cry. The one who still believed life was sacred. That you still lives, still breathes, still waits. So stop running. Walk home. You've peeled back the layers. You've seen the cage. You've felt the ache behind the numbness. You've touched the pulse of your forgotten self. And now we arrive at the final doorway. Not the end of the journey, but the revelation that reshapes everything before it. Here is the ultimate truth. You were never escaping life. You were escaping the death of your false identity. Every time you reached for distraction, every time you avoided discomfort, every time you numbed the stillness, it wasn't because you were weak. It was because something inside you was trying to die. Something no longer real. Something no longer you. The ego, the fabricated self constructed from survival, fear, approval, and roles, cannot survive presence. It depends on noise. It feeds on illusion. It only exists in memory and projection. The present moment, raw and unfiltered, is its executioner. And so you run. Not because life is unbearable, but because truth is. Because truth, when it lands fully, doesn't just change your mind, it burns through you. It tears apart everything that isn't aligned. And when you've built a life on escape, the return feels like death. But let me ask you this. Isn't it time something inside you died? Isn't it time to bury the version of you that always smiles even when you're breaking? The version that says, "I'm fine," because you fear being seen. The version that needs validation to feel worthy. The version that says, "One more scroll, one more hit, one more minute." Knowing it never brings peace. Let that version go. Let it fall like autumn leaves, natural, necessary, beautiful. And beneath it you'll find what you were really running from all along. Stillness, presence, power. Not the power to control others, but the power to meet yourself fully. To face your inner world without flinching. To walk into the cathedral of your soul and not tremble. You see, the reason escape seduces us is because we've been told life is about comfort, not truth. About feeling good, not being whole. But comfort without truth is a padded cell. It protects you from pain, but also from awakening. The real joy, the sacred kind, is not found in fleeing life. It's found in feeling it all, fully, fiercely, without editing, without apology. You are not here to escape life. You are here to become it, to dissolve the walls between you and existence, to stop living as an observer and become the experience itself, to cry and rage and dance and tremble and laugh from your belly not your mind. The addiction to escape was never your flaw. It was your soul screaming, "There is more than this." And now you know. Now you remember. You remember that your discomfort wasn't failure. It was a compass. That your boredom wasn't emptiness. It was potential. That your silence wasn't loneliness. It was initiation. Every moment you spend in presence is a rebellion against a world that wants you sedated. Every time you choose reflection over reaction, feeling over fleeing, connection over consumption, you're reclaiming your soul inch by inch. And the more you do this, the more life begins to speak to you again. In the way light moves across the floor. In the way grief suddenly cracks your heart open. In the way the wind knows your name. In the way your own breath becomes a prayer. This is not about becoming someone new. It's about remembering someone ancient, someone timeless, who's been waiting in the quiet all along. And if you're still wondering whether it's possible to live without escape, to live without numbing, to live awake, the answer is not found in certainty. The answer is found in the next breath, the next choice, the next time you don't run. Because the final paradox is this: freedom doesn't come from avoiding discomfort. Freedom comes from loving what discomfort reveals. And once you've touched that, truly touched it, you can never go back. Not fully, because you've tasted something real. And realness, once known, ruins you for anything less. So let this be your moment, not a resolution, not a goal, but a reckoning. Close your eyes, breathe, feel what arises. Don't escape it, welcome it like a lost child returning home. And then walk, not toward some perfect version of yourself, but toward the one who has always been enough. You were never broken, you were buried, and now you rise. If this awakens something inside you, don't let it stay in silence. Comment below. What truth did this make you face? Subscribe to Echoes of Mind for more raw, psychological and philosophical journeys into the soul. Share this with someone you know is ready to stop running. Like this, if you felt seen.